I've had several people come up to me and said, what can I do to be you? And the only aspect of me that's really doable is I can tell you what my academic pedigree is and what I did as a kid and what things interested me. But what I do day to day is not the fulfillment of some pre-existing job description. It's just things that I took interest in on my own that the general public happen to also appreciate or like or want access to. And so within my job description as director of the Hayden Planetarium and as an educator, as an astrophysicist, I kept accreting other things that I did that people responded to, positively responded to. So I can tell you about the academic pedigree. The rest, you have to create what it is that you do best, that layers onto the formal training that may be behind it. I think the greatest of people that have ever been in society, they were never versions of someone else. They were themselves. You don't think about Michael Jordan, the basketball player, and say, oh, he was just like this other player. No. You don't even say he was like this player plus that player divided by 2 plus this. No. He's Michael Jordan. I think the greatest of people in society carved niches that represented the unique expression of their combinations of talents. And if everyone had the luxury of expressing the unique combinations of talents in this world, our society would be transformed overnight. It's the great tragedy. People employed in ways that don't fully tap everything they do best in life. I'm privileged and I don't take a day for granted on the job about the fact that what I do, what people most warmly receive about what I do, are some of the things that I do best in life. I'm honored and flattered by that combination of facts as they apply to me. So your task is to find the combination of facts that apply to you. I just want to highlight a few things. I'm worried really about how much fuzzy thinking is going on in the world. Fuzzy thinking, people just not thinking straight. And I try to think hard about what was behind it. And I reflect on a time with my sister. My sister is younger than I. I'm 4 years older. So I'm like a whole school ahead of her, right? So I'm graduating high school, she's entering high school. I'm graduating college, she's entering college. And so one time I said, so Lynn, where do you want to go have lunch today? Because I had some cash and and she said, well, what are my choices? And it was odd because I didn't realize until that moment that she was not yet capable of simply coming up with a fresh idea. Why? Because she'd spent her whole life taking multiple choice tests. So I ask a question, she wants choices in front of her to pick from. This would continue the whole life. And then I tested this with other people. People want choices. And I realized maybe it's hard to just think originally and come up with a fresh thought that the person who's offering the question hadn't thought up yet. Because I think somehow in our society we're hell-bent on the answer. The right answer. Because when it's the right answer, it's the right answer. And when it's the wrong answer, it's not the right answer. Consider this following example. Imagine you have a spelling bee. This is contrived, but it makes the point. There's a spelling bee, and you have to spell the word cat. Okay. So one student spells it C-A-T. Person got it right. The next person spells it K-A-T. That's wrong. You got that wrong. Okay? Third person spells it X-Q-W. Do you realize that is marked equally as wrong with the K-A-T? When you could argue that K-A-T is a better spelling for cat than C-A-T. Dictionaries know this because that's how they spell it phonetically. And so we've built a system for ourselves where there's an answer and everything else is not the answer, even when some answers are better than others. So our brains are absent the wiring capable of coming up with an original thought, or thought not previously considered, or thought between the ideas that are already laid on the table. What we're not valuing is knowledge as process rather than knowledge as an answer. In another example, a little contrived, but it brings the point home even a little more strongly. If you're an employer and two candidates come up looking for a job, and this is, again, a contrived example, and you're interviewing the two candidates, and you say, oh, as for part of this interview, I just want to ask you, what's the height of the spire on this building that we're in? And the candidate says, oh, I was an architect. I've majored in architecture for a while, and I memorized the heights of all the buildings on campus. I know. The height of that spire is 150 feet. In fact, 155 feet tall. Okay, turns out that's the right answer. That's the right answer. And the person came up with it in seconds. That person goes away, the next candidate walks in. Do you know the height of the spire on this building? The candidate says, no, but I'll be right back. Person runs outside, measures the length of the shadow of that spire on the ground, measures the length of his or her own shadow, ratios the height to the shadows, comes up with a number. Runs back inside, it's about 150 feet. Who are you going to hire? I'm hiring the person who figured it out, even though it took that person longer, even though the person's answer is not as precise. I'm hiring that person because that person knows how to use the mind in a way not previously engaged. You realize when you know how to think, it empowers you far beyond those who know only what to think. People learn from me in a way that they are empowered by what I taught them. So that when they think of what they learned from me, they no longer think of me. They think of their own base of understanding of how this world works. And so that I become irrelevant from that exercise. And because if people say, this is true because Tyson said so, then I failed. That's not how you teach someone. That's teaching them by authority. No. I want to teach you how to think about the world, and then you say, I have a new way to understand the world, and you just run off. You don't even look back because a new level of hunger has descended upon you, and methods and tools to feed that hunger are now accessible to you. So my impact would be that others are impacted and they don't even remember that I had something to do with it. On my tombstone, I want the epitaph, be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity.
Whoa.
That's Horace Mann.
I can get behind that.
And a victory for humanity is not a victory for yourself. It's not statues, it's not your name, it's just humanity's better off. You want the world to be, any of us, I think, should want the world to be a little better off for you having lived in it. That doesn't mean people praising you, no, not even about that. So what do you have to give with no expectation of return? Somewhere in there we need to train people how to think, how to analyze, how to interpret, how to be skeptical of information, and then how to recognize when sufficient data has been put forth to turn something that you might be skeptical about into something that is a newly established objective truth. That is not taught in the schools. This should be a class just on what science is and how and why it works. And that would transcend the physics class, the chemistry class, the biology class, the geology class, the general science class. This would be its own course. So that when you are college educated and some institution has declared you graduated and a learned member of society, if you turn around and say, I choose not to believe this emergent scientific consensus, no, you don't have that option. It's not how objectively established scientific truths are determined.